Hey guys, it's Evan. Welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to be doing something a little bit different. We're going to be reviewing drift footage. The very first time I got to drift. It's going to be sort of a sim to real life drift comparison video. I'm going to give some tips, break it down what happened, and see how overall they compare to each other. Does the sim really work? I'll tell you my thoughts here in a minute. And I wanted to jump into what my sim setup is right now. Currently I'm using a SimMagic Alpha Mini. I've got Fanatec pedals, Moza handbrake, and a Thrustmaster shifter. First started sim drifting in February 2024. I started with a Fanatec CSL direct drive wheel. I got off eBay for a pretty good deal. That was my very first wheelbase, but it really helped having the direct drive, and I'm gonna jump into that a little bit more in this video and what I think my personal recommendation would be if you're just thinking about getting into sim drifting. So the very first car I got to drive was Steve's E92. It is a 335, it's got an N54, got Wise Fab, all that good stuff, big single turbo. Probably makes 500 plus wheel horsepower. So this was the very first time I ever got to drift. I never drove rear-wheel drive cars at all. My very first time. I daily drive a Subaru, so I've never done anything like skids in a parking lot or anything like that. This is legitimately the very first time. So let's jump right into this footage here. So this is my very first lap. Like I said, it's on skid pad at pit race. So not too risky, but I am driving someone else's car. So I wanted to take a little bit cautious the very first lap. Just feel out the car. Never driven rear-wheel drive, like I said, so kind of understeer, just feeling out the car. Like I said, give it a little gas here, and I do spin out. But in that very moment when I did a little bit of a drift, I was like, this feels exactly like the sim. Just from that small drift there, I realized it felt exactly like my Fanatec, a direct drive, just the way the wheel snapped and everything. It felt exactly like the sim. And then I drive out the rest of the lap here, just feeling out the car, give it a little gas. Like a little bit nervous, first lap, but I was also very excited. Then towards the end here, I do start getting sideways a little bit on these last two corners. So overall for a first lap, not too bad. I did drift a couple corners, can't really complain there. So let's jump right into the second lap here. Also, this second lap here got cut off at the beginning. I did understeer a little bit. I didn't try using a handbrake or anything. Just wasn't going fast enough. But I did on the second corner here. Kicked it sideways. And in this moment right here, I was like, this is exactly the same. I'm driving the car. All the throttle inputs felt very similar. The wheel felt very similar. Like I said, yep, second lap out ever, and I linked almost half the course here, which is pretty insane to see all my skills translate from the sim to real life, and it felt very similar. And then third lap, I went into third gear. I was in second on the very first two laps, so tried using a handbrake tenor, wasn't going fast enough per usual. Just using someone else's car I wasn't really familiar with. But I do get it sideways here, and I really notice here, I'm like, oh, you got to work this car, clutch kicking it. It's a big single turbo. It's a little bit of lag. That's the one thing the sim doesn't really teach you, is the turbo lag. I've never driven any cars on the sim that have noticeable turbo lag. But as you can see, shredding, third lap ever. All these skills learned from the sim. It's crazy to really see it translate to real life. And I know there's tons of videos out there of people showing the skills already translate, but I wanted to make my own video just in case you wanted more proof. I've never driven rear-wheel drive cars. Like I said, no motorsports background or anything like that. This is all from the sim. But still, I really think it's worth it. If you're thinking about getting into drifting, definitely grab a sim first, especially if it's the off season. You're like, I want to get into drifting next year. Grab a sim. It's definitely worth it. You're going to get your money's worth for sure. You're not going to have to spend the whole first drift day spinning out or anything like that learning. You'll already know it going from the sim to real life. It's pretty much the same. But yeah, those were the short clips. I just wanted to jump in and share my thoughts. Like I said, all throttle inputs, steering, very similar, especially if you have direct drive. I really recommend getting a SimMagic just right off rip. It will save you so much money. You won't ever have to upgrade again. But if you are looking for something a little bit cheaper, I'd recommend Fanatec. direct drive or Moza direct drive. They make some affordable options. I really would pass on the Logitech. I know, might be a hot take, but they just feel like toys to me, and when you compare them to direct drive, I really think it's worth saving that extra money and just purchasing a direct drive wheel right off the bat. I don't have the craziest sim setup. I'm still using a single screen. Got a Next Level Racing entry-level cockpit, so nothing crazy there. I have tried VR in the past. I can't really get used to it or use it, just not for me. But the single screen works pretty well with NEC FX. Looking for that, it does translate. The single screen translates in real life, looking side to side and such. But if you have a VR, that'll be exactly translating over too. Overall, my thoughts are get a sim. Like I said, highly recommend. If you're thinking about getting into drifting, it's worth it 100%. For a fraction of the cost of a car, tires, and event entry, you could already know how to drift the very first event. A well set up car definitely helps. Big shout out to Steve for letting me drive his car. I drove this in July, and that's only 5 months of sim experience. I was driving a lot of VDC cars. I started out on Gravy Garage cars. When I started out, I was learning the basics, donuts, stuff like that. Eventually jumped in tandems with my friends, you know, VDC cars, Gravy Garage, stuff like that. And it really does take a while to get used to on the sim, but once you start nailing it, you can start driving every track, any car, you're definitely ready for real life. So I highly recommend getting a sim. It's pretty crazy being able to jump from the sim to real life. It really blows my mind when I'm thinking back at it. There's definitely some similarities in real life drifting and sim drifting. Obviously in real life you gotta account for turbo lag, but that's the biggest difference. Everything else, throttle inputs, steering, very similar. Thanks for watching this quick breakdown. If you want more content like this, I can definitely film more. I've got a couple other cars that I got to drive later in the year, so if you want to see videos like this, I can also break those down. Let me know, have you guys ever went from the sim to real life? How does it compare? Like I said, drop a comment, drop a like, subscribe if you want more content like this, and I'll catch you guys in the next video.